Welcome back to the Last Week This Week podcast, episode 78. I'm Ian Scott.
And I'm Zack Huber.
And this is the podcast where we talk about movie and TV topics from the last week, get them to you all this week. And this week we have a review and a few exciting topics to go over with you.
Yeah. So recently, James Gunn has come out on a bunch of interviews talking about his upcoming show, Creature Commandos. And we got some clarification about that scene at the end of the Peacemaker season 1 finale.
Some overall clarification too.
About what is and what is not canon in the new DCU, as well as having some R-rated stories in the works. This should be no surprise to anybody. Star Wars just fumbles again. And
every week they fumble.
We have they no longer have a release for December 2026,
which was the Rey movie. Yep.
Which was the Rey movie that nobody wants, or at least half of us want, I guess. The live action How to Train Your Dragon teaser came out, so we're going to talk about that. And the main cast for Marvel Zombies has been officially released. So we'll go over that, and Ian's got some story elements he wants to discuss regarding that project. And most importantly, to start the show with, we're going to talk about the Dune Prophecy season or series premiere. I'm not entirely sure how long this is going to go.
Thing. Right.
But some background, I love Dune. Admittedly, only read the first book. Obviously I've seen the 2 movies that have come out most recently.
You know quite a bit about the other books, though.
I don't know if I would.
Okay.
I don't know if I would say I do.
Okay.
But I get. There's a good amount of the lore that I know.
Right.
And so when this show got announced, as far as I'm aware, it's not being produced or has any kind of connection with Denis Villeneuve and his movies. And although it's obviously taking some of the production and the look of the movies and kind of like the feel of the movies into the show, but it also wasn't necessarily based on any one particular book, to the best of my knowledge.
Actually, from what I hear, it is based off of Dune: The Sisterhood, which was written by, I think, Frank Herbert's son.
Yeah, and so that's why I kind of say like it's not. First of all, thank you for clarifying. I did not know if it was actually based on it, but I wouldn't, for me, and from what I understand from a lot of people, like the Brian Herbert books, like his son's books, are not exactly.
Nobody really likes those, right?
And so, considering this wasn't based off of one of the main 6 that like Frank wrote,
right,
and it's kind of. It is 10,000 years before the story of Paul Atreides. Yeah. There's a lot that could go wrong, and that's why I was kind of really nervous when this show, when we were starting to get looks at it, and I was kind of nervous because it used to be called Dune Sisterhood, and then it had a showrunners leave, and it had the writers leave, and they kind of revamped it and changed it up. Which in one sense could be a great thing, because we see that happen a lot lately, like at Marvel.
Right.
But it also could not be good. And considering this wasn't based off of anything, I was like, I don't really know. Like, I feel like part of the attraction of Dune is specifically the story of Paul and all
and the struggle on Arrakis.
Yeah, and the political stuff that goes around that, of course. But there was a central story that was really interesting, and it was touching on a bunch of topics. Whereas this, a lot of comparisons to like Game of Thrones, even though I would say Dune was the Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones. But like we live in the age where like Game of Thrones, in the broad cultural sense, is the thing that takes up space as like the political scheming show and houses and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of curious, like there needed to be more than just the political scheming for this to kind of, I feel like, be interesting. And
there wasn't much more than that. I mean, in my opinion, but I don't know, maybe you're feeling different.
Well, So I want to say like I'm not gonna say like I love this show because I'm the way I feel about it is I'm not turned off. I'm not, but I'm not like super excited. But I'm intrigued. Like
I feel pretty much the same. I'll just say like I don't think it was bad, but like I did think it was kind of boring at points and it dragged a little bit. But it's not all uninteresting. There are some interesting things about it. But yeah, you were gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, without getting to the spoilers just yet, I agree. There were times where I was like, I mean, it was late. I was getting a little tired.
I was dozing off to a point, but I was like, oh no.
But like, yeah, I mean, it started off really strong. Like I was leaning in. I was like, ooh, we're actually gonna show this. Well, I guess I'll just say it. We're gonna show part of the Butlerian Jihad. Like we're gonna show this.
They don't
war.
call it that though.
Well, maybe they will. I don't know. But you know, they show it. It was pretty neat. They were kind of giving context to you know, Valia Harkonnen, who's a main character in the story.
Probably
talks
the
about
main character. Yeah. I mean, she's the one who's narrating at the beginning, you know.
You know, it kind of talks about like, well, the Atreides, it's not actually true, which like it's not really true what they did, and like you know, bad things happened to my family and they were kind of scapegoated, and I hope that I'm sure they will, but I hope they delve into that side of it, and you know, everything building up to like the Reverend Mother passing away and the drama between her and the other sister and like her killing her. I was like, all this is like I enjoy this. It's interesting and I'm enjoying this this backstory. But then when we jump to the present day,
can I jump in and kind of give my opinion on that? So I guess my thing was that, and I could be wrong, I could be misremembering the first Dune movie, but like I remember there being like a couple of like screens of just like text that kind of got you up to speed, and then you were just kind of thrown into it, right?
Yeah.
And so like, you know, like Star Wars kind of does the same thing. They give you this context and then they throw you into it. This was like a 10-minute like kind of partly narrated backstory, which was,
well, I mean, they kind of I'm not gonna they do kind of have that in the movies too. No, like they talk about like I forget who narrates the first movie. It might have been Lady Jessica, but there's a narrator that explains you know the Emperor, he's a jealous man, and you know, you start to so like, and then the same thing in part 2 where you have Florence Pugh's princess,
I guess,
who says that stuff. So I mean, it's way more. Yeah, I agree with you. It is way more drawn out.
It's so drawn out in this, where I was like, when are we getting to the actual like meat of the show? And it's not like the story was bad. It just, I mean, I don't know, like this hour-long like show felt like it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours. It was just dragging, and like, yeah, like the climaxes were cool, like her shouting at the woman who was like the zealot, like that was cool. Like that was like the first instance we'd kind of seen of that ability. They're implying at least. But yeah, it just like showing the machine war, and then like showing that there was a split, and that there was this Reverend Mother that like only called for her. Like it took a while to get there, and that's kind of how I felt about like the entire episode, was that it just felt like it was taking a while to get like anywhere.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
it did take a little. It takes a long time to get to most places this episode.
Yeah, it does.
And you know, I couldn't even begin to tell you most of the characters' names unless I looked them up.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's 4 groups you're following technically. So you have the Emperor you're following, and his guy like Desmond, I think is his name. I could be wrong.
Yes.
And then you have the Reverend Mother, the Harkonnen, I can't remember, Valia Harkonnen.
Valia.
And her kind of inner circle and her sister. And then you also have the students that are being taught, which to me is like the worst part of the show so far. Like they're pretty cheese, and I could give a shit about most of them. And then the third,
Nez, the Emperor's daughter.
The Emperor's daughter and her half brother and the prince that she marries. And so there's those four groups, and they jump around, I mean, pretty equally. But the whole first episode is like setting up all of these characters. And I honestly think it would have been better paced. And I don't know sure, they might become important later on, but if we only focus on Nez and not the other students, I think that would have really helped. Not that I'm like super into Nez yet either, but she's at least important to the story.
Nez is one of the more interesting characters, I think. Like she's probably the most interesting character to me, besides
I would say Desmond for me.
Well, but so far that's only I would say that the scene where he's having a one-on-one
with the Emperor?
Yeah, with the Emperor. When he's having that one-on-one talk, I was like, this is the kind of like acting and like scenes that I want to be having. Yeah. And I was like, so when that scene happened, I was like, ooh, more of this. This is great. Yeah. And there was bits of that in other parts of the episode. But I remember specifically like that guy, these two actors are doing a really great thing right here. And I want more of it.
And there's a lot of mystery surrounding Desmond and why he's still alive, why he has these abilities we see at the end. He's easily the reason I would come back, and it will come back next episode for the show. Yeah, because when we get to the end, when shocking things, happen, you kind of want to feel like you understand the repercussions, and like I can understand like, oh no, the marriage, it's not going to happen. It's throwing Valia Harkonnen's plans that she's had forever into disarray.
Right, but and it's causing problems for the Emperor because he needs the troops, right? Right. But I didn't feel when that happened like, oh no, this is because I don't think I really felt super invested.
But the stakes weren't there yet. I don't know. I mean, they tell you what the stakes are.
They tell you what the stakes are.
You don't really see and
I didn't really feel invested in the characters and how important it was.
And it's not like I'm rooting for Valia Harkonnen right now.
Right. Yeah.
So her plans being thrown into disarray. I'm like, okay. And Mark Strong he's cool, and he's I think he's acting well in the show, but like, if his Emperor is done, then you're like, okay, that's fine. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's not like really one character besides Nez that I'm like, I like Nez. Nez has like the most personality, I think. Yeah. And the most.
Do you know who the actress is who plays Nez?
I have
because like she just like her eyes and her face just like scream Winona Ryder to me. I don't know what it is.
Sarah Sophie, might butcher this. Bosanina.
Okay, so somebody I haven't heard of.
Bosanina. I don't know. Yeah. Haven't seen her in anything.
Yeah. Well,
but I liked her. She was cool.
Yeah, she's got a very Winona Ryder face. I don't know. Did you get that at all, or is that just me? I don't know. The eyes just really think of.
Nah, so I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, so, I mean, I agree. Like, it wasn't a bad episode. It wasn't a great episode. It was just like, okay. I mean,
it was all right.
I get it. Like, I thought it was a little shocking to have, her want to marry, like not want to, but to marry this, 9-year-old boy. And there's
but it makes sense. Right.
I mean, sure. Yeah. And like, I got it. Like, okay, the Emperor needs the ships. The Reverend Mother's trying to eventually form the Kwisatz Haderach, and or at
Nez
least like,
sorry, Tom.
or at least have the Sisterhood not be targeted.
She wants them to have, she wants them to have power. Right. And then Nez wants to train as a sister, like for 10 years, so that she can control her own destiny there.
And so I'm like, okay, these moving pieces. Desmond's kind of interesting. Like, what's going on there? Why is does the worm actually eat him, or does he how does he get saved?
I think the worm eats him. I don't know what the hell happens there, but that was a cool scene.
And he's claiming that there's insurgents who caused the disruption. We'll see if that's true. And so there's these moving parts that in theory are interesting, but the kind of the execution of the episode, I was a bit like, oh, all right, let's pick up the pace or something, have some interesting character interactions that are, and there were I did enjoy I thought it was going to go on longer than it did, but when Valya's sister is teaching about lying and the white matter in the brain, and I was like, that was kind of an interesting scene, and I was hoping that was going to go somewhere,
but I get why Valya interrupted, because they should know this. They should they're at an age where I don't know, they're almost adult women, if not adult women already. They should know what the lying entails, and I don't know, and I think Valya implies they're okay, well, you clearly get it, now you're going to be tested. So I don't know. I look, if we don't get any more classes in teaching, that'd be great on my end. But
sure,
that's just me. Yeah.
I agree. The stuff at the school, probably the least interesting. I didn't really. I would have to watch it again, but the sister who ends up getting burned.
I think her name was Kasha.
Kasha, yeah. I didn't understand what the tension was between the Valya and her, and also this image of the burning bodies that the Reverend Mother at the beginning sees. I'm like, okay, so something's happening here, but
right.
It didn't click for me immediately. I was like, okay. Do
you get it now, or I can kind of go into it if you want. But.
Sure. I think I get it, but
yeah. So. And I could be wrong about this, but from what I got was that she had this vision that it was of the sandworm eating Nez, right? I think that's what she had a vision of. And there could have been some burning bodies in there too. I don't exactly fully remember the vision, but she was like, hey, I'm getting a bad vibes and some bad visions, and I don't think this wedding should go through. I think this is a foretelling of what's to come. And so, but Valya just didn't buy it. She's like, if you oppose our plans, then you're out of here. And, I don't fully understand why she gets burned per se. Because I could be wrong, but do they mention did she ever have a bond with this kid that she marries, or I don't think she would, right? There's no reason.
I don't, other than, was she the Bene Gesserit assigned to his?
But she was assigned to the Emperor.
Oh, so she was assigned to the Emperor.
Yeah.
Then I don't know.
Right. So I don't know. I thought they had mentioned that there was maybe this bond, and that's why she got burned at the same time.
I don't understand it.
I don't understand that. But I do think it's very interesting. That's a cool mystery they're setting up of why was Desmond able to burn her and from another planet and this kid that was right in front of him without even touching them.
Right.
Very interesting. But yeah, there's not much more to that dispute than just she got a bad vision and was we shouldn't do this wedding.
Right. And I think, even though the Dune universe has women who can use a voice, has trained their voice in a certain way, or
to command people, right?
To command people to do something, or a mineral, the spice from Arrakis, when you take it, you gain certain powers, or some people use it for interstellar interstellar travel because they've ruled out or they've outlawed all the thinking machines and computers and stuff like that. That to me, like, even though there's that stuff, there's still in a way, you're like, if like, okay, somebody trained their voice to do something, right? Like, I'm like, fine, whatever. Or like they take this drug and they can do whatever, you know, like I'm like, but the idea that this person, whoever Desmond is somehow able to burn two bodies
with his mind,
with something.
It seems like it's his mind because he doesn't touch anyone. He just starts doing it.
Is where I'm like, whoa, like that's really
insane. Right.
Like, and it, like the other stuff, I'm like, at least there's some sort of scientific, like you can kind of chalk it up, even though like it's outlandish for sure.
Yeah.
But like this is like some like witch, like magic, you know, sort of, not that there's not exactly that, but it's still more like when you take the tea, when you drink the blood of like the sandworm, and you know you die on the inside, and then you become, you know, you have the memories of all the, like, I'm still like, okay, well, there's maybe for some reason the sandworms keep the memory of, I don't, you know, like, it doesn't make much sense, but at least there's like, but it's not like telepathic. I don't know. It's just
sure. No, it's getting a little crazy, but like it's interesting crazy. So, but if they write it and explain it well, then I'm not upset. Yeah.
But I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but that is why like things from the Brian Herbert and the extended lore could potentially be like, well, now we're kind of, you know, pushing things, and then we were already, you know, like we already had Fantastic. But
I think what's good about the show, though, and I'm saying something that's not even in the show, but like, is that it for fans who don't like it and love the two movies that have come out, this is in the same universe, yes, but it is set so far before that you can completely ignore it. Like, it is so ignorable, you don't have to pay attention. It's fine. Yeah. It's some extra lore for fans that want it. And I guess in that sense, it's a safe title to launch and be the first spinoff for Dune.
Right.
If it fails, it's not a huge loss, but yeah.
The one thing that you did touch on about that it's so far in the past.
Right.
My criticism with a lot of properties that decide to make prequels or sequels, but more often than not, it happens with prequels. And like this happened with House of the Dragon, even though House of the Dragon didn't so egregiously do this.
It's like
but
200 years. Yeah.
It was like 200-300 years, you know, House of the Dragon.
200 at the most. Yeah.
I was like, you'd think there'd be a little bit of change, and there kind of is, but not really. But we're talking now
10,000, over 10,000 years.
I know that they outlawed thinking machines, but you're telling me that the way that one of the shields that they use, or the lights that, I mean, the light kind of looked a little different, but the light that follows them around, or like the general architecture or the way people dress hasn't changed that much in 10,000
like it's been
years,
hundreds of generations, and you're like, nah. Nothing needs to, like, look, the sets look great. I think for the most part, like the money was well spent. And in the show,
besides that one shot where it's like the water, like they're going over the water, and I was like, oh, that looks bad.
I don't quite remember.
It was a short shot, but it was just like them on the train or something going over water.
Okay,
not look good,
not look great. But like all the rooms and like, I don't know, it didn't necessarily. I didn't think it was out of place, but you're right. I mean, like, really nothing has changed from over 10,000 years ago to the present day.
Yeah. And like they already, at least in my mind, started to play with the idea of like, you know, like, why do we have to be so strict about outlawing the machines? And it's only been like 100 years.
Yeah.
And like the kids slipped up on this thing. And I'm like, so like, I mean, I'll give them props. Like, you can, like, an interstellar empire has, stuck to their guns for over 10,000 years.
Yeah, but it is surprising that like they were able to keep things in line, even 100
like,
years after.
We're not, like we're already starting to deal with like this little bit of like
people who want the machines back, right?
And we're like, we're not changing anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely a mistake. But they want you to feel like this is the same universe, and so
I understand that. It's just couldn't have changed things.
No, but here's the thing. Well, the one thing that I think did change was the Emperor, like where he lives, like his homeworld looked a bit different than like what we see in Dune, right? Like it was a lot like brighter, whereas in the movies it's a lot darker. I think like the environments changed and whatnot, and I could be wrong about that.
I think it's still the same homeworld. It's just
I know it's the same homeworld, but I'm saying like over 10,000 years, the environment has drastically changed to where it looks different.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So there's that at least.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
But I don't know. Not much else, unfortunately. Yeah. Well, it was probably like a 6 out of 10 episode, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like a 6.5, maybe for me.
If we're being nice, yeah.
Yeah, it was fine. It was fine. I didn't hate it. I was a little sleepy sometimes.
Same. Yeah.
But overall, like there was some cool stuff that I liked about it. I
would agree.
I would agree. Now, if I was not a Dune fan, I don't know if I would watch more.
I probably wouldn't. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So there's that.
I probably wouldn't have watched at all, to be honest, if I wasn't a Dune fan. But
yeah, I mean, granted, I didn't watch any of the trailers besides like maybe one of the I think it was the first one or two.
Yeah.
But like that didn't necessarily like grab my attention either.
No.
So, but we'll see. Hopefully it gets better.
I hope so too. But let's move on to another Warner Brothers property here, or kind of universe. James Gunn, you mentioned earlier, he's been saying a lot of things in interviews. And the first one being that he said all of season 1 is pretty much canon to the new DCU, except for the
Peacemaker.
fact. Yeah, sorry. Season 1 of Peacemaker, all of it's canon to the DCU, except for the fact that he met the Justice League at the end of the show. And he says, we're kind of going to deal with that in season 2. I know originally he said not all, or like a good amount of like Peacemaker wouldn't be canon. It seems like, things have changed and now it's like it seems like he's referencing a lot of what happened in season 1 of Peacemaker, and like in I guess the upcoming properties. And so, the only thing that doesn't align is the Justice League at the end. I'm sure it'll just be like, I guess in my head, it'll be like, oh, remember when we met, like, it'll be like it'll be Superman, but like other, like, like Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific and like the other people we saw like leaked on Superman's set. Like, remember when they came and like saved our ass or tried to save our ass? And
I mean, maybe it could be like Vigilante says like, oh, it's like this fucking Justice League losers. He showed up at the end, they couldn't help us out, and he's like, Justice League? No, that was like, I guess Superman might have been there, but it was, who's like Aquaman? No, he wasn't there. Like,
right. Maybe they'll call him like the Justice Society. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, on top of like the Peacemaker season 1, he was like, and if there's something that's referenced from Suicide Squad, like that's part of the canon.
Yep.
And we're gonna find out pretty soon, come December 5th, I think, when Creature Commandos comes out and they start referencing these things.
I can't believe that's like, we're getting the start of the DC universe like in a couple weeks.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
It is awesome. But I mean, I always thought like you can take all of Peacemaker season 1 and there's literally no reason to scrap that other than the Justice League bit.
Yeah.
Like everything else,
it's totally fine.
Didn't touch. It was pretty isolated. Like there's no connection to the rest of the universe.
Yeah.
I would like to imagine that there might be a smarter way to deal with that Justice League bit than just like, oh, you're not remembering it correctly.
Right.
But even if it's like no, what, that never happened. Like, I don't think that that's what's going to happen, but hopefully even if that's what happens, like there's a smart, funny way of dealing with it. But I do think that there probably is going to be some sort of story element that they deal with, because if you were just watching Peacemaker season 1 and then you were like, I want to watch Peacemaker season 2, first of all, you would probably never even have to acknowledge that scene, but let's say you needed to, like hopefully there'd be some sort of smart way of being like, oh wait, that never happened, so that never happened now, or like it happened, or like we recontextualize it and it's like, no, this is actually what happened. Right. We're moving.
These what showed up, or these were the people who showed up. Right. I think it would be neat, and I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for him to like have an alternate ending at some point to Peacemaker season 1 and have like the new like members of like the Justice League or like whatever this big group is like show up at the end and be like, this is the actual canon, what happened. And this is like, this whole season now, the way you're watching is canon to like the new DCU. I think that could be fun. I don't know. Maybe he won't ever go there, but I think it's possible.
It's possible. I mean, he has all the power.
He does. He really does.
He can greenlight whatever he wants.
Remember, like, I don't know. I think it was a couple days ago. He was like, yeah, I luckily enough with Creature Commandos, I wrote the whole thing before I became head of DC Studios. And then, I greenlit it myself because I'm a great head. So, I'm like,
I saw a great story.
Right.
Let myself do it.
I think it's neat though, that like, he did write and make this originally for the old DCU. And so like, yes, it's like fully canon to this new universe. It's the start of the new universe, but like, it's interesting to think that like this could have fit in the old universe too, for the most part. I'm sure there's going to be some like new things that he's added for the new universe, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like, if it was to, if it was to come out when it was still the DCU, I don't think that it would have been like an actual part of the DCEU.
Sure, because they didn't have that kind of mandate yet.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Yeah,
but
no,
like,
I think you're right.
I could totally see it as just like another like Harley Quinn show where it's like it's its own thing,
right?
And
or we get to follow Amanda Waller again, but
and if you had Rick Flag Sr. in it, like you didn't have to talk about the Rick Flag Jr. Death of it all and the Peacemaker of it all, which I'm sure will get brought up at some point within the show.
Absolutely.
But then again, I could be wrong. Like maybe it would have been tied in loosely because you have Weasel, who's going to be brought over from the Suicide Squad. And I guess, I mean, like I guess I'd be curious to know like how much of it got written in like a part of like how much of it has now been changed to fit like DCU, because Amanda Waller like says like, well, the government said we can't do humans anymore, so now we're doing monsters. Like that was obviously a reference to James's Suicide Squad movie
and the end of Peacemaker. I mean,
right. And so would that have been a part of it? I don't know. Like
right. Because if it is its own thing, or if it was going to be its own thing, then obviously you wouldn't have all these references, right?
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
The new one does,
but the new one does. So but anyways, what I'm trying to say is, I think that this is, not the perfect way that a lot of people wanted, like a clean start,
right?
But in a business standpoint, and in a standpoint of like things that did work and people like,
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
if you were
the
to
Suicide
scrap
Squad and Peacemaker is, right.
you know, it would be like, now you could do like Peacemaker something, you know, a whole new show. But like, I think like that would just be so disappointing.
Right. But I think you could have also made it an Elseworld story. You know, you could have just been like, this is its own kind of part of the universe, and we're just gonna not connect it to anything. And here's the thing, like, yes, these stories that he's bringing over are some of my favorite. Like Suicide Squad and Peacemaker are amazing stories from the old universe. It's just, I think a lot of us, and I still wish we could have gotten a fully fresh, clean start where we're starting at like ground 0.1 for the new DC universe. And like, would that have meant maybe never getting more Peacemaker? Yeah, like that would have been very unfortunate, but like new beautiful things can come from it.
Yeah.
You know? And so I don't know. I don't hate it, but I'm not like necessarily loving the fact that we're like pulling things from the old universe.
Yeah, I mean, are we going to enter a universe where Captain Boomerang is shredded by, you know, into splinters? Are we entering a universe where who else kind of died a gruesome, terrible death in that movie? Like, are we going to have that backstory?
Polka Dot Man died a gruesome death. Yeah,
like, are we going to have that backstory of Harley and the Leto Joker? You know, like, her
because like
on a break, like she's already broken up with him. Like
the Suicide Squad picks off like it's very much a sequel to the original, and you're like, well, technically that would be the starting point of the DC universe.
Yeah, so it's what I'm imagining it as, and like, it is gonna be already like a head fuck for anybody who wants to get into the DCU in a way.
No, you're right. Yeah.
In a way is well, if it gets referenced in this show,
then it's canon.
It's canon. But then like, so it's like you can watch those movies and they are technically canon, but bits of them aren't. But bits of them are.
Like, yeah, just explaining that, someone's gonna be like, I'm fully not interested. Like, I'm done.
Yeah, like at work today, one of my coworkers was saying, we were talking about how her daughter was recently getting introduced to Star Wars. And somebody was like, oh, that's really cool. But like, you know, then it's like, well, when you start watching them, it's like, was this in the past? Was it in the future? It gets all confusing. And to me, I'm like, no, it's very easy. I can explain it.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, even me, I'm like, well, so the Justice League wasn't actually the Justice League, or that didn't actually happen. And like, Harley from this movie is like the same Harley that shows up later, but now like that whole thing with her with the Joker, like they're actually together now, or whatever they end up doing. Like,
right.
So I don't know.
It could be a mess.
Yeah. But I have faith because it seems like there's a plan. There is. And I hope when he says they kind of address it, they might not actually like fully address it. It might just be like a glance over, but we'll see.
No, that's what I'm worried about too. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They have a plan. He knows how to run a studio. Like the other piece, you know, that he kind of mentioned was that like whatever movie comes up for us, like we're going to apply like it be a rated R or it be rated PG-13, or this is, you know, like it will be suited for the medium and the story. And yeah, so like, obviously that's great. It's not like, let's just keep all this for kids like the MCU has done up until Deadpool Wolverine.
I think that's...
No, but you know what I mean? Like they have refused to do an R rating until Deadpool Wolverine. And so they're trying to keep all the kid audiences in there as long as possible.
Right. I mean, but they're also owned by Disney.
Right. So yeah, Warner Brothers is going to have a little bit of a different take on that. And
which I think is really smart. There's nothing that they're necessarily, you know, holding themselves back from creatively, right? Yeah. So there's that aspect of it. There's the aspect of like hopefully it is more of like, well, if this suits PG-13 more, we'll do PG-13. If it suits R, then it will do R. Like, we're not going to be beholden to it. And I do think that's something that can be really interesting and what can set the DCU apart from the MCU in a really interesting way. And you already see it with like the Elseworld stories that they do.
Yeah.
They've been, at least for like a second there, before Joker 2 for most people, were like a big hit and were very interesting takes. And we need stuff like that. Like you look at the Absolute series that they're doing with the comics, and they're really big hits and they're really interesting. And not that Marvel doesn't have that, but I don't think that I don't know. Like I still feel like they kind of still play in this more animated world or like more upbeat world in a sense, which isn't bad. Like I like that in DC as well. And I think there needs to be a balance. But what I was interested in about them going that route is I was thinking today, one of the things that like in the MCU, what they used to do is you would be able to jump into any movie and basically be able to watch it and not have to have the context around it until we got to like Multiverse of Madness and until we got to like the Marvels and stuff that was like, okay, well, you should have watched this TV show and you should have watched that.
Even the Avengers movies before that.
But sure. But I think I still would argue, and I think that there's been multiple people who have gone to see those movies who are first-time MCU viewers who watch those movies. And yes, you're missing a lot of context and backstory. Right. But you can watch those movies and you understand who this character is, you understand who this character, or you get the gist of who they're supposed to be.
Right.
And I think with the fact that there will be some movies that are like, don't bring your kids to this, kind of reinforces the fact that like, okay, we have to treat these movies like somebody is stepping into this universe for the first time.
Yep.
And we're also not gonna throw things in there that like for context's sake, other people who enjoy these movies will pick up and understand, have a deeper appreciation for. So
there will be a through line. Like you will see like the story continue throughout the universe. It just won't be like so in your face every single movie.
Right.
It'll be focused on the story at hand and then we'll move on to the next story at hand.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, just from even starting out with an animated show, which right off the bat, not everybody's going to watch that because people treat animation like it's like a kid
second class
or it's second class.
Yeah.
And even though this looks very adult, and that's the other thing. It's not only just animated. It's like a very graphic looking show.
Right.
And so there's, you're going to want people to still come out in droves for when they eventually do like a Justice League movie or like when they do the Superman movie. Yep. But you're going to have Rick Flag Sr. and Superman. Maybe there'll be words exchanged there or something that happens in that movie that references back to Creature Commando. So somebody can go like, that's a cool connection.
I wouldn't doubt if Amanda Waller comes in and, says something over the ear, to Frank.
Right. Yeah. But they're also going to make that movie specifically as just, that is also your starting point into the DCU. And the same thing for Lanterns and the same thing, but and I think the movies are going to be a bit more not like as
following, like they're kind of continuing the story more than the others,
but they're going to be like their own stories. They're going to be jumping off points, and they're going to be forced with every like different projects having different ratings, different styles, that they're going to force themselves to have to make it accessible for people as their first instance. And that goes for Justice League or whatever they end up doing in the future. I just think it's smart.
Yeah.
And it makes, and it doesn't hold people back from doing creative things.
Right.
Which is definitely what is needed.
Right. We need great stories over like a grand universe yet. Which like let's start with a solid foundation.
I've been saying that, but I feel like 2-3 years ago, people were like, well, I don't care about watching this movie if it's not connected to the rest of the universe. It's like, but that's a problem. Like, you're just following this like product at a point,
Right.
and
You're watching like the longest television show in history.
Exactly. And like when people used to say, "Oh, they should have stopped it at Endgame," I was like, "No, there's so much more that we." And now I'm starting to get. I still think there's a lot of story to tell, but like as it's been going, I'm like, "Woo, we really got to shake things up a bit, people." Like, geez.
Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, no, it is. I know, but
no, but I agree.
Just for comparison stakes, like with the two big companies, you know.
Yeah. And DC got their shakeup. They ended their last universe, and they're taking the bold step that the MCU couldn't do. So, even though I'm excited for the next two Avengers movies, but we'll see.
It seems a bit more. We're keeping things pretty status quo, but we might go back to like just great movies, and that's what they need to be, right?
Agreed.
So
totally agree. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's our thoughts on James Gunn's comments this week. On the other end, the Disney end of things, some release dates got shook up on their calendar. The big one being that the Rey solo movie that would take place after Episode 9 of Star Wars is not on the table for 2026 anymore, and in its place is now Ice Age 6. For some reason, that's getting a sixth movie. But yeah, the other news that kind of went along with this too was that there are multiple movies in the works for Star Wars where Rey is a main character, and
that's smart.
Well.
That's some smart thinking, dude.
The other reports here too is that like they feel like Rey is their most valuable asset at this point.
She is,
which is crazy, insane. I would say the Mandalorian may be over her, but I don't know, maybe not. And then
I'm being facetious. I'm being sarcastic.
Okay. And then the other part is that not all of the directors and writers they have on these movies know about the other movies that are being made. So some of these Rey stories could be in conflict with each other. It's very possible. That's the reports I've heard. And so some of them might not happen. Some of them might happen. I think we mentioned last week, there's like 15 Star Wars movies in development right now, technically. So it's a mess over there right now. The Rey movie is also on its fourth writer, I think. So there's a reason why this got delayed. It seems like they're adamant on making it, but it doesn't seem like it's coming together at the moment.
Yeah. Well, this is another reason why Kathleen Kennedy has to go. But
you got to have some kind of a plan, but
do I think, in a franchise, multiple directors working on different movies, do they know the ins and outs and the story of, did the multiverse, did Sam Raimi know Multiverse of Madness, like when he was making Multiverse of Madness, like what was happening with Spider-Man No Way Home? Did he know what was going to happen with like the Marvels or Thor Love and Thunder? Like, I'm sure he was like, I'm just focusing on my movie. So in that sense, I'm not that surprised. Like, that doesn't sound too out of place. But the fact that we're working with the same character, and the fact that
that's the problem.
Lucasfilm's track record of we're just kind of spitballing here, like we're just gonna see what wall sticks.
And, see if it sticks.
And that's where I'm like, all right. First of all, the fact that you brought up that Rey they think is their most valuable character is so insane. And I think the Hollywood Reporter did like an article that said that like, well, I mean, you do kind of have to, if you're going to make more Star Wars movies, you kind of have to have Rey. And I'm like,
you don't.
Well, you really don't. I mean, if you want to mention her, you could. Like, if you
don't even have to do that.
But you don't. You really don't.
You don't. Like, I think the problem, everyone's thinking like we have to set our movies out like past episode 9,
yes.
right? And there's such a like we've already had a movie announced that goes all the way back to the Dawn of the Jedi, where we have the first Jedi ever, like where that James Mangold is making. So like you could make a trilogy out of that if you wanted to. Like you could go to any point in the Star Wars timeline. We just did it with the Acolyte. That was 100 years before Episode 1. Like they go everywhere on the timeline. And you could make a trilogy anywhere in the timeline. Like it doesn't have to be with Rey. I just don't get it.
And also, she is, even though I liked the Rey character, I didn't like what they did, but I liked
her in 7 and 8. I did.
Yeah, I did too. But she is inherently, at this point, a very divisive character and represents an extremely divisive part of Star Wars fandom. And now, granted, we're talking about the fandom. There's, I think the most general movie-going audiences who are like, I like Star Wars, let's go watch it. They're not thinking like, oh my God, Rey. Like they probably haven't even thought about the Rey characters like since
Episode 9,
2019, if they even saw that movie, right? So like in that sense, I'm like, I guess like, yeah, they're not too worried about it, but I do think that one of the most divisive characters at this point, representative of a very divisive time, I don't know why they want to continue with her, especially it's only been but like 5 years after arguably, and I would definitely say probably the worst Star Wars movie that they've ever done.
Yeah, agreed. Like by a mile.
And in so much has forced them to completely halt any movie productions for 5 years, other than bad leadership.
Solo also kind of swayed them into not doing that. But sure,
but like also having really bad leadership or maybe not leadership, but
direction.
Yeah, being able to put projects together. I don't get it. I'm glad that they moved it, I guess,
because it was never going to make that release date. Right. Yeah, I mean, with a story that's not coming together, that's cycling through writers. Right. I mean, it's just like, why are we forcing it? Like, what are we doing?
And I'm sure there is a story to tell, but like, man, at least in my opinion, I'm like, I don't care. Like, do we want to rebuild after rebuilding again the Jedi Order? Is that where we're going? Like,
and wasn't like kind of the message by the end that like the Jedi shouldn't be anymore?
Exactly.
I don't know.
So I'm like, I'm sure. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
It's a bleak time for us Star Wars fans. I don't know. I don't expect anything good out of the movies at this point, and I don't know. It's sad. It's sad. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. The fact that they want to focus so much on her is just
it's boggling.
Yeah, because this is your opportunity,
right,
to move past that time period. You could move 100 years in the future if you wanted to. You could focus on completely new characters in another part of the galaxy. You could go back.
That's something that like we're ignoring too, they're ignoring, is that like this universe is gigantic. Like let's focus on a new original character and a different part of the galaxy that's interesting.
Right.
And,
and I feel like they do it for like a bit. Like when The Mandalorian came out, they're like, oh, like we hear you. Like Star Wars is not just the Skywalker saga.
Yes.
And then they like, yeah,
such a right direction to go in.
They did slowly bring in the main characters into season 2, but it was done really well.
Right.
And
it still fit the story.
Yeah. And it still felt like we're still outside the main story. It's just those things get woven in here and there, and it was cool.
Yes.
And then you just had to, I wouldn't say that season 3 was just bad for different reasons.
It was bad.
But then you start to like go back to Obi-Wan, and then you start to go
You go
back
to Ahsoka.
to Ahsoka, and then you start to, then you're like, oh, we're gonna do Acolyte, but then
That's
you still,
right. Yeah.
then you still tie it in kind of into
Well, you fully tied in
Plagueis.
Plagueis. Yeah. I mean,
and
and
that was
kind of
just
the
bad.
origin of the prequel trilogy. So yeah, I agree. That's bad.
And like we're about to get Skeleton Crew, but like even then I'm like, how are you gonna fuck this one up? What are you gonna do to make me not like this?
I don't know. I mean, it's very possible that they shove in another main character from the past because it's very possible we see Ahsoka or The Mandalorian because it is supposed to take place at the same time frame as like Ahsoka in season 3 of The Mandalorian. So again, I'm worried about that. It looks really good. The trailers look really fun. I'm digging it, but I mean, you can't not be worried when it comes to Disney and Star Wars. I mean, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's like, well, let's do Boba Fett. Let's do this character that we've seen before.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, let's just, like we do Andor, which like, yeah, props. Like there's some great stuff when they've gone back to, but like Andor in a lot of ways is a new character.
It is.
Yes, it is following the main story in a way. And it is very tied to the main story, but it was, you can make the argument that like Boba Fett was tied to, the main story, but it's their chance to flesh out this fan favorite character and do this like kind of mob criminal story.
Right.
Even though I would argue that's not exactly what that story was.
It's not what that story is at all. I mean, that's what they wanted to do, but they didn't do it.
But and like, because I was going to make the argument that like Andor is this semi-new character.
Andor's the exception to our rule right now. Like that's pretty much it.
Yeah, maybe he's the exception because they did this like spy.
They fleshed out the resistance,
of like the resistance and what it actually meant to be in the Empire, and so like, and it was like the people on the ground story, which was interesting and continues to be interesting. But so I guess that's the exception. But everything else was like, we're gonna go back to Obi-Wan, we're gonna do Ahsoka. And granted, like everyone had wanted to see Ahsoka on the big screen, so I'm not gonna like completely take.
Even I wanted to see it, and it's not like it's a bad series. It just gets a bit rough towards the end. And it's a bit rough in the beginning. Yeah. I'll say that. Yeah.
But I just feel like we're just like, let's bring in more of the main universe and let's tie it into like
right. Because if it's not something we've seen before, then they're thinking like people just aren't going to go see it, which is just, I think, wrong. Yeah.
And even like the Acolyte couldn't help but like, we're going to throw Yoda in at the end.
Or they threw in Ki-Adi-Mundi, which we'd seen in the prequels, and
right,
yeah.
Which was like a nice nod. I didn't mind that much. That was kind of cool because like his race lives for a while. But like like they couldn't just help. They were like, we gotta just a little bit in there.
Yeah. It's not great direction for Star Wars at the moment. But yeah, I say we move on to the teaser that came out as of our day of recording. We got a minute-long kind of teaser for How to Train Your Dragon. This is the live-action one directed by Dean DeBlois, who did the original. And yeah, you get a very, it seems like very well-directed, very visually stunning little teaser here. I mean, it is like you said it earlier. I mean, it is impressive. It's not like I'm obviously not like wanting more live action movies that were once animated stories,
right.
But it's interesting to see a different take. It does feel like we're kind of getting a Viking type Game of Thrones feel here, and then basically to sum up the teaser, you get Gerard Butler as Hiccup's dad, and he's like, you got to kill dragons. That's what we do. And he's like, Dad, I can't kill a dragon. and then he goes up to Toothless as Toothless is sleeping, can't kill him, and then later sticks out his hand for Toothless, and Toothless kind of like nudges his head into the hand, and that's how you end the teaser. but all looks really visually stunning. And then Toothless as well is really like a 1-to-1 recreation from the movies, the original movies, just a little more detailed with actual scales and whatnot. So yeah, I can't say I'm disappointed in anything that they've shown. I'm just not worried. What's the word there? Like
skeptical.
Skeptical. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I share the same viewpoint as Ian with most of the animated content now becoming live action. Like, for fuck's sake, we have Moana, like around this, not too long after Moana 2 is about to come out, we're gonna have a live action Moana.
It's too soon for Moana. Like, we can't be doing this already.
You know, and we've only seen like still images of like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. Stitch looks great.
He does look great.
But like, do we need it? No, we never need anything really. We don't really ever need a sequel. We don't really need a movie to ever come out.
But like, when the original is so perfect, let's just why retread those waters?
Yeah, like nobody's remaking Wizard of Oz. You know, like nobody's gonna do that. They might do spin-offs of it.
Like, no one's remaking like Back to the Future or, you know, like The Godfather. Like, it's not gonna happen. You know?
Yeah, but they're like, well, but it's animated, so we gotta have the live action because
we can do it differently.
People really like. And now, I do think that from this teaser, people did talk about, like, I've not really heard a great argument other than like, well, this way we can pretend that an actual dragon's there. Like, I'm like, yeah, well, sure, I guess. Like, I could pretend that a dragon was there when I saw Toothless in the animated, and people were like, anyways,
yeah,
looks great. Toothless looks amazing. I like the general atmosphere that is being presented. Like, it does kind of have a bit of a darker reality to it.
Definitely.
But besides that, like, yeah, it's definitely
pretty much the same movie at this point. And I think that's like, you could see, yeah, I think,
and like, I want the Hiccup.
Mm-hmm. I think he looks great. Yes, I think the actors, he did a good job in the teaser. All
the three main characters that we've seen so far, great. I mean, honestly, like, really great.
I think, like, what I would applaud them for doing is doing something different, so that there's a real purpose to why, like, we're getting another iteration of the same story. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna say like the live action Mulan was great or even good.
I've not yet seen it, but it was different, and that was one of the things that I was like, oh, I kind of want to see what they did with it.
Right, they did a lot differently with that, and they, you know, they were like, well, the original story before the original movie even came out wasn't, you know, it didn't have this talking dragon. It wasn't like specifically made for kids. You know, it was a more adult story, and I think they did that in the live action one.
And just to touch on the made for kids aspect of it all,
right?
Hannah, my girlfriend, has been watching a bunch of old Disney movies, and she has been like,
haven't she ever seen them before, or is this like first time?
She just watched them again.
Okay.
And like, she's like, Hunchback of Notre Dame is not a kid's movie.
I haven't seen that since I was a kid. Funny enough.
Well, it's like the villain is a priest who wants to like marry this young girl, and he hates her that she won't marry him, so she's gonna kill him, and he locks this deformed being up into the tower, and that's the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it's like, yeah, that's a fucked up story.
It's a pretty dark premise, yeah.
And like Hercules, we were just watching that the other day or yesterday.
I don't know if I've actually ever seen Hercules.
Oh my God, that is a good Disney movie.
Nice.
But it's like, I mean, they do kidify it, I guess, a bit. Like, they do make it for a family, but like, I don't know. It's still like kind of a pretty grown up story, and I would say the same thing for like, well, I don't know what else I would say it for, but what was I gonna say about making it like a like a kids movie. Or what were you saying, that they're making it darker?
Just that, I'm a fan of, like, if you're gonna remake this movie, I'm a fan of like doing things differently and maybe adapting it for more adult storytelling than kids storytelling.
Right, and I hope that they like push it more than what we've seen, which I'm sure we'll find out, because it's only like a minute teaser. But yeah, I do think it looks really good. I hope they do what you were talking about. And also, we're having like a mini discussion that Ian was kind of saying, well, if you're already trying to make it realistic, why don't you push it one step further and have Toothless look like an actual dragon?
Because he still feels very like a cartoon. Like, he's very round and and
the big eyes, like, and it's not exactly the type of scales that like if I was to see in real, like I'd be like, oh,
that's pretty flat.
But so, but I was saying that I feel like if you went that route, you would. It's the same thing that when you see the dragons in like Game of Thrones, like, yeah, you could develop some amount of emotions towards them, but they're not nearly as expressive as somebody like Toothless. And you run into the same issue that Paramount did when they first had the first reactions for Sonic when he came out, because they tried to make him more realistic, and then they also tried to do the Lion, like Disney with the Lion King. And
I think it's easier though to make like a more realistic looking dragon than like a more realistic looking talking hedgehog. But okay, sure, I get what you mean. I
agree.
Yeah,
but like they wanted the fans were like, no, like get the big eyes, and it works. And also with the lions and the animals and the first Lion King, like there was such a,
like, it was too realistic.
It was so realistic that like a lot of people were like found it really hard to relate, and like
because there's no emotion coming from the animals. It's just like voice acting.
In the Mufasa movie that's coming up, they've drastically made steps to make them more.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, like if you just from watching like the lion, when like Mufasa's on like the river and he's like floating down the stream, like his eyes get all big and you can like see smiles and stuff. Yeah, it's like it just doesn't. It's like watching one of those old, I forget which movie it is, but like the old movies from like the 90s where the dogs would talk, but it's just a dog.
Well, they just did one recently, like with like Kevin Hart, Snoop Dogg. Yeah. So no, those look terrible. But I think the more reason why they didn't, one, you're right. Like fan backlash, if like it's not exactly Toothless, like the fans are going to be pissed. But also like you probably do better. Sure, but you also do run into like the problem that like if it's a really realistic dragon, then you're kind of like you run the risk of people saying you're just copying Game of Thrones, because the vibe of that world, I mean, it does feel like it could be in Game of Thrones if they didn't have the Viking hats on. You know, like they could be in the north and you know, just they want to kill dragons. I mean, that's pretty much it. But you know, with the kind of element of Toothless being a much different looking dragon than the ones in Game of Thrones, I think it has its own identity there.
Yeah, you know? But and I could be proven wrong. Like maybe somebody send me a realistic image of Toothless as a realistic dragon, and I'll take back my words. But I don't know how you make a realistic looking Toothless. You know,
I mean, it would be so different than what we see.
And I think you would be like,
I agree. I agree. It could be jarring as hell, right? So I think for the most part, it's a good decision they made in sticking to what they have, because you kind of get your own identity and you appease the fans. So,
and I think this is a theory, but I think in most movies where you have I think this is a truth. Most movies where you have a young boy or your main character encounter in a different being than themselves, and it's kind of that like bond. the outside being that they befriend, for some reason, has to have those trusting features of like the big eyes and and big ears and or stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so like Iron Giant, big eyes. E.T.,
big smile,
big eyes, big, weird hands. Baby Yoda, big eyes, big ears. Like, I think there's just like that sense of this is a friendly being to have like empathy and like want to have friendship with, as opposed to like a dragon, like a lizard, a huge lizard that's just like staring at you with its dead eyes. And you're like, oh, I'm supposed to love it.
Sure. No, I feel you. I think that, it makes sense. I mean, it's going to work better for the story. And I think it's, like I said, it's going to work better for live action too, even though, and maybe it only would have worked for live action if you had never seen it animated. I think that's like the only way that works is if like Toothless had never been animated and this is like your first look at him. That's when you could do realistic, but otherwise it was never going to work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, other than that, I think it looks really, really good, actually. This is, I don't remember seeing a release date at the end of the trailer, but I think it's coming out next year.
It's like June.
Okay.
Yeah.
But directed by Dean DeBlois, I think. And starring Mason Thames as Hiccup and,
June 13th.
Why am I blanking on
Gerard Butler?
Gerard Butler. Yeah. Gerard Butler coming back for the same role. I think that's pretty cool. So overall, I'm a little excited, I would say. So, but our last topic of the day is Marvel Zombies. We got the kind of cast list for this, so I'll run through that real quick. We got Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel, David Harbour as Red Guardian, Simu Liu as Shang-Chi, Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch, Randall Park, Jimmy Woo, Florence Pugh as Black Widow, Haley Steinfeld as Hawkeye, and Dominic Thorne as Ironheart. And then they also announced Todd Williams, but I don't know what role he will be playing. And so I think I had assumed, and maybe what everyone else is assuming is that like these are the characters that are going to be like the humans in this story, and they'll be fighting against like this zombie invasion or whatever, right? What I had been reading about the Marvel Zombies like original issue, it was like a 5-run comic, was that basically like you're following the Marvel superheroes as zombies. Like they have intellect, they can still speak. They just have an insane hunger for flesh. and they look like zombies.
Just a little quirk about me.
Yeah. So like there are still living heroes. It seems like very few. Like I was reading that like in the comics that Ant-Man had Black Panther. His Giant Man had Black Panther like chained and was like feeding off of him slowly. And I was like, holy crap. And then like Wasp found out about it and like that he was hiding Black Panther from her. And so he just killed Wasp. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I don't know.
Was Wasp not a zombie?
No, but they were both zombies. But like Wasp was like upset because like he was hiding food from her. Yeah. And so
you're not sharing.
Right. And so Giant Man's like, all right, I'll just kill you then. So it's definitely dark. It's an odd direction to go in. So, and I don't know if you know this, but this was also originally developed by Robert Kirkman, I think. And he's the writer for Walking Dead. And so I was expecting like a Walking Dead type story, and this is just so not it. And like, I think how it starts off is that like a Doctor Strange zombie variant like tricks Doctor Strange into opening the portal and like the normal like Earth that we're in, like whatever 616, and so all the zombies like come through and like take over that world, and then later on like Silver Surfer comes and is like, hey, Galactus is gonna come here and kill you guys, and then they kill Silver Surfer, the zombie heroes, take a bit of like cosmic power and just like fuck shit up on Earth. Apparently, like they pretty much like they instead of eating like humans, they go for like other zombies. So they're eating other zombies, and then that doesn't like satisfy their hunger, and so somehow like Galactus comes, like he doesn't really have a problem, but that they in the end, I think using Silver Surfer's like cosmic power, they're able to take down Galactus, and they become like a zombie group called like Galacti, and like dude, it's crazy. And then they go into space and start like taking over other like worlds as like, you know, as zombies. Like they start like basically feeding on other worlds, and I'm like, okay, that's like it was just like it's the most insane route you can go with a zombie story. I don't think I ever wanted to follow like the zombie versions of heroes as basically villains. I don't know. It's an insane route. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is that like I hope to God that they don't adapt the comics and just like make something original, because it's so not what I want. I don't know if you're going to feel the same way.
Well, I mean, yeah, I did think that it was going to go more in the route of like that what if episode where the heroes are trying to survive
That's exactly
zombie.
what I thought. Yeah, right.
And I thought it was be a continuation of that story.
Sure.
Almost. Yeah. Which, unless I remember correctly, none of these characters necessarily were, maybe except Haley Steinfeld's Hawkeye, but
I remember Spider-Man. That's about it, to be honest.
But like, I don't think any of these characters were in that group that we were following, so it still could be.
Right.
But now that you say that that's an alternative, I mean, is it insane? Yes.
It's so insane.
Do I think it's what they're gonna do? No.
Because they never adapt the comics one for one.
No, but like the idea of following the heroes as zombies, I'm like, that's interesting. I mean, it could be terrible, but it's interesting.
I just don't know why I would be rooting for a group of superhero zombies to like take over and eat like the entire world. Like, I don't think that's something I really need to see. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, like I don't really think I need to see this show because I didn't really want the zombie story.
I agree. Yeah, for the most part, I was like, if this is a continuation, I definitely don't want it.
The only reason I think that they might adapt the story at least a good amount, maybe not to the point where they blast off into space, even though that would be fucking crazy.
I mean, it would set up a season 2 for sure.
Well, or it could just end there and be like, and they enslave the rest of the world,
the rest of the universe, right?
The rest of the universe. Because part of the reason I'm like, either you make this show for the diehard fans who love the Marvel zombies, or you make it as like this Halloween kind of thing, and it's like a spooky story that you can follow.
Yeah,
and
it's probably the route they go down.
To me,
the latter.
It would. I feel like just because all these characters are definitely set up for the future of the MCU, that they, especially some of them, are gonna be like one of our second time only seeing them in a Marvel like a project.
Oh, what, Hawkeye?
Well, like Ironheart, yeah, Hawkeye, Miss Marvel in a way,
I can't believe Jimmy Woo is in this.
But I love
what is he doing? What is he doing?
Jimmy Woo. I love Jimmy Woo. but I find it hard to believe that we're gonna follow them around as like these villain zombies.
Right.
So I think it's not exactly gonna be that. Maybe Galactus is gonna show up at some point. Probably not.
But wouldn't that I think that would be a bummer too where we see Galactus before he shows up in the actual movies, Like let's preserve him for his like big entrance. And then maybe we can play with him in a future what if or whatever the fuck you want to do. But
yeah, I mean, I don't think they're gonna bring him in. Could be wrong, obviously. But I think it's mostly going to be like, wouldn't it be cool if Haley Steinfeld's Hawkeye faced off against zombie Jeremy Renner Hawkeye? Or
sure, right.
Wouldn't it be cool if Elizabeth Olsen, or like Scarlet Witch faced off against, like, even though this would not make any sense at all, zombie Vision, like.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's probably the route they go down. And I think what people would like to, at least what I would like to see, is a group of heroes who have maybe at this point it's like years down the line of the zombie apocalypse, and they have failed. Like the earth has turned and they can't do anything about it. But there's a new plan forming, or a new superhero comes into the fold that like can change the tide or something. I don't know. I think a Resistance is much more exciting to me.
Anti-zombie man.
Anti-zombie man. Yeah. Let's do a new original character.
It's Bob.
I don't know.
Bob from Thunderbolts.
Yeah. Sentry just comes in here and fucks shit up. Yeah.
Or Blade. This is Blade. Blade comes in.
Hey, I mean,
it's not vampires, but
it's not vampires. You're right,
but it's the best thing.
It is. That would be cool to see Blade chopping through zombies.
It's like Mahershala Ali as Blade. We've waited this whole time
just for this, Marvel Zombies. Whoa.
Yeah.
But no. So I don't know if you know this too. They're only doing a 4-episode series for this, which is so short. But at least that's, if it's bad, then it's bad for a short amount of time. But it's coming out October of next year, so it'll be around that spooky time.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
I was feeling like this is like a little, either runs through the course of October or just drops all at once. Like watch Marvel's.
I mean, that's perfect
Marvel's
because
zombies,
it'll be in 1 episode per week in October. So yeah. Yeah, so curious about that one. I am, but we'll have to wait a year for that. So
yes.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, I think that's the end of our topic list here. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about that you watched this past week?
Well, I was pretty busy last week, or at least
I haven't watched a whole lot
busy,
either.
I was not feeling well, but I did get to watch one movie, and it was because Transformers 1 came out on Paramount. And so I watched Transformers 1.
I'll get to watch that now. That's great. So how was it?
Yeah.
Is it perfect?
I'm not going to give it, I did not give it 5 stars.
Okay.
But I gave it 4.5.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty high.
Yeah, this is hands down one of the best movies of the year.
Whoa.
And it is by a mile the best Transformers movie I've ever seen.
Wow.
What they did with the characters and the story that they told was just it was so incredible. I was like, for somebody who is just a casual Transformers fan, I think you'll get out a lot out of it. But as somebody who like grew up with Transformers, and I wouldn't say like it goes a ton into lore, but like it does bring things from lore and brings about certain things that happen that are just really neat to see. There's callbacks to other movies in the universe. It's kind of those things like if you don't catch it, you'll miss it. But it's cool. But yeah, basically the commentary that they're trying to tell about, I would say there's a lot of social commentary that I was not expecting in this movie. That was really good. It could have been done in a really like cheesy way, but they could have gone like a safe route with it, but they didn't. And the stakes and the relationships, especially the relationship between Optimus and Megatron, was so good. And like the action's so good. and they definitely marketed this movie. They probably could have done it a little bit better, but like I would find it pretty hard to market this movie and not give away certain things other than how they did it, because like they definitely marketed it way more towards like a kid's audience, which
because I saw the ads and I was like, I'm good. I don't need to see this.
It's definitely, or it's just like a good movie. Like it's not oriented towards kids at all.
Right.
It actually gets quite serious and quite dark.
Nice. Okay.
It's really good.
Nice. I'll definitely watch it this next week, probably.
It's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the only things I've been watching, more Survivor, watched the beginning of Only Murders in the Building season 2. That's been good. What else? I don't know if obviously, Dune Prophecy.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned it on here, but I don't know if we did it last week, but I did
finish something, but go on.
Okay, but yeah, so I just rewatched. I've been doing the Harry Potter series, so watched Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince. I will say, like last time I watched the Harry Potter movies, Order of the Phoenix was like my least favorite of all the movies. I wouldn't say that now. I think I have a greater appreciation for that one. It's not as badly directed as I thought. It's got a actually pretty good story, other than like a few plot points that are pretty weak. But like overall, it's not bad at all.
And then the weakest one then now.
So I still haven't watched either of the Deathly Hallows this go through. I would still say out of the 6 I've seen, that's my least favorite. But I have a feeling that like one of the Deathly Hallows, like I think probably part 1 will be my least favorite. Yeah.
Interesting.
We'll see though. But yeah, Half-Blood Prince was as great as always. I love that one so much.
Love that movie.
Yeah. Harry Potter's still so good to this day, and I'm glad it holds up. Yeah. It really does. But yeah, I think that's all I've really watched.
I finally got to not finally, but I finished the last 40 minutes of Trap.
Oh, yeah. How was that? How did you like that?
It's
insane, right?
Me and Hannah were watching it and we're like, okay, so he has this route. They're like these 2 contingency plans, I guess, where he's gonna take this pop star. First of all, why? Like, I guess I understand that he forced her to take them home, right? Because she
was the one who forced herself. Like she was
I know that,
right.
But like,
but like getting out of the venue, he forced her. Right.
But then when they get there, she's like, "Well, I want to go in," and I'm like, after thinking about it, I'm like, why? Like, what are you gonna do?
It's crazy because she doesn't have a plan. Like she's improvising, it seems like the entire time.
Like I know she was briefed on the by the what did they call her? The
identifier, like
not identifier, but the person that was helping,
the profiler.
Yes, thank you. So like I know she had all these go-to things to kind of like disrupt him and to like,
but to I know the one you're gonna bring up. It's insane.
Well, I know. I know there was that, but that's actually not the most insane thing.
Well, okay, what were you gonna bring up?
Well, I was just gonna say like it was an insane thing to go into the house when she could have easily been like, he's the guy we're gonna call, because what's his plan? He's just gonna live out in the house the rest of his days, or like I guess he could go through the tunnel, but like he'd be missing and he wouldn't see his family ever again.
Yeah.
So there was just all of a sudden all the routes that the movie could take don't start to not make any sense.
Correct.
And so so she eventually gets the phone. He forces her to go down to the garage, and he's got like this backpack set up, and he's gonna drive off with her, which again, like, I don't know why he has to take her, right?
Because she's a hostage, you know.
Oh, well, okay. I guess there's that.
I mean,
and then she starts to do the, like, I'm your mom thing.
That was so insane. Like, why did that work? Like, why? And here's the thing. Like, all the things that just like happen out of nowhere, that's my biggest problem. Like, they could have set up these things in the movie. Like they could have like with the wife. Like, the wife is set, like she comes in like halfway through the fucking movie, and then you find out she's the whole reason why he was caught in the first place. And you're like,
I knew it was a family member. I knew a family member. It was either his daughter or somebody else set him up.
Like, you could have shown them, like, instead of the movie starting at the point where like they're already on the way to the concert, you could have shown them at the house, and maybe the wife is acting a little weird, and you're like, huh, what's up with that? And so, but you know, like, they could have foreshadowed some things, and they just like spring shit on you out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, that mother thing is just crazy. It comes to you out of nowhere.
Well, so I agree, but what's crazy to me is, so the garage door opens, and basically
the kids and the mom are there, right?
The kids and the mom are there, and then the pop star just leaves.
She just gets
out of the car. Gets out. No problem. Garage door closes. He's just sitting in the car.
He goes into the tunnels, right?
Then he goes into the tunnels.
Yep.
And then somehow finds her at night.
Right. Well, yeah, it's implied that he's taken down a SWAT team officer and stolen their gear.
Right.
And,
you're right.
And for some reason, she's still in the limo outside of the house.
Right.
Why? I don't know.
I don't know. But now he's kidnapped her and now has brought into the idea, I knew as soon as I saw you, I had to kill you. Like, you were the one. So now he's made it a whole thing that, like,
that's right. Yeah, you're right.
That now he's got to kill her.
Yeah. Well, remember at the concert, he did give her that look. He was like, "Oh, I might want to kill you."
It was so. Anyways, I was like, "But sir, like, yes, you're insane, but like, you have bigger things to worry about right now."
Yes.
And so we at least to me, it felt like there might have been a nod to it before, but it was like, wait, so now you're going to try to kill her? Anyways, he drives into the city for some God-known reason.
So bad.
I guess to one of his safe houses.
I guess.
And
gets sworn by fans.
Where then again, in less than 10 minutes of the movie, she just leaves the car.
And that's the last time we really see her. Like, that's pretty much, that's the end of her story. And we're like, and at least I'm like, what was the point of her character?
And I was like, what was the point of that scene?
Right. But then the way he escapes is the most ridiculous shit I've ever seen. Like, no one's going to notice that this driver of a limousine gets out in full SWAT gear, and then he somehow swaps clothes with somebody.
Oh my God. It was so stupid.
What are we doing? Yeah.
And then they were like, what the excuse was like, oh, he must have gone out in someone out in the crowd and like in all the commotion. It was like, oh, I guess, but like, y'all are completely surrounding the area. Like,
right. I don't get it. Right. And then like the biggest piece of like shit ending happens in this movie where like they finally catch him again. He, has this moment where he fixes the bike.
Well, no, before that, when the wife's explaining everything.
Sure. Yeah.
And she's like, can't we have a piece of cake?
Well, yeah, she poisons it, and that's what gets us right. Yeah,
but it's like not even poison; it's like a sedative. Yeah, and then he has this hallucination with his mom.
Right,
but then fights off.
Like a ton of tasers.
A ton of like 5 tasers.
he's literally like they're saying he's a monster at this point. Like that's what they're implying in this movie, that he's like some entity that is just not a normal human. And he like gouges this dude's eyes out almost. And and then you're right. We get to the point where he's arrested. He fixes the kid's bike, somehow steals a spoke off of the bike without anyone noticing. And
literally a metal spoke,
a huge metal thing. And then for some reason, no one's in the back of the squad car with him. When he's escaped multiple times, and he just breaks out of his cuffs. And then we end on him smiling. Like, that's the story you want to tell? Like, what is that? It's terrible. It was such a terrible ending.
It was a terrible movie. It was. There were things. The only reason, so I gave it 2.5, and
so did I.
And the reason that I gave it was because up until a point,
it was enjoyable.
It was
slightly enjoyable.
It was fascinating. You know, like it was really intriguing, and it was a really cool and new idea for a movie.
I think it all goes downhill once he leaves the venue.
As soon as he, I mean, there was problems with how I feel like the movie was done, like switching back and forth between that being a concert and like this, like
that wasn't
needs
great
to get out of a trap.
Right.
But for the most part, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Like as soon as he gets out of the venue, I'm like, what the fuck is this movie? Like,
right. And I was like, we're only halfway into the movie and he's already escaped. Like how much more is there?
Yeah. And I was like, we did not need 2 kidnappings and both of them with the victim to just leave the car.
Yeah.
Like just opens the door and leaves both time. I was like, you wrote that. Like you wrote that the Lady Raven just leaves through the car 2 times in the same movie in less than like 3 pages of script. Like, okay.
Good job. Yeah. And then like they also just disregard like his kid was such a major part of the movie. And then she's just kind of like not really a player in this story anymore. Like once they get home, like she's full on side character. Like I don't know. I just think it would have been more interesting to like
I know
go to her point of view. You know?
I know, but because
like
didn't.
She's had easily the best day of her life and the worst day of her life combined into one day, and you're like, well, that's an interesting point of view to have. Let's see her.
You could see that like he deeply cared about his daughter and his relationship. Like he was like, I'm so angry at you. Like, you know, I'm like
to the wife,
to the wife. And I was like, this I buy and I'm into, but then
there's just a lot of problems. But
also like the fact that the wife suspected, right? So she suspected, but then she had enough foresight. Now, I don't want to discredit this fictional character, but like the wife had enough foresight to make an entire cake with this sedative in it.
No, I thought it was just that like the pie was already made, but like while she was getting the plates together, she like went into his bag and like used the sedative that was like in his bag or something. I thought that's what happened. I'm pretty positive that's what happened. But I could be wrong.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
But if
there was a bunch of powder on top of it, and I just thought that like the powder was the sedative, and that was put on both pieces of the cake.
Yeah, she didn't eat hers, right?
Because she didn't eat hers.
Yeah.
But maybe you're right. But if it's that one, okay,
that's better.
I'll give it that. But then that would also mean that like I don't know.
Like, why is he not paying attention? Right.
I don't know.
There's just it's not one of Shyamalan's best. It really is not.
No. I mean,
I expected more.
I would watch Knock at the Cabin any day over that movie at this point.
Agreed. Yeah. And I wasn't like that thrilled with that one either. But
I think I probably gave that like a 3.
Probably, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like it deserves more than half a star above Trap, but I don't know. Maybe not.
I don't know.
But yeah, I think that's everything we've watched in the last week. Thank you again, as always, for watching and listening to us spew our opinions on random topics.
It gets vile.
It gets vile in here, man. We trash some big franchises. But yes, thank you for watching and listening. If you'd like to watch and listen to us in the future, our schedule that we would like to stick to is releasing on Mondays, clips Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, live streams at the end of the month. If you want to follow our social medias and other things, those are in the description below. And if you would like to support us by giving us a like, a comment, a rating, a review, or a subscribe, we'd greatly appreciate it.
And as always, until next time.